Hello and welcome to Open Mic. I'm Sabrina Solomon, joined by Mr. James Wakiaga, UNDP representative in Eritrea. This is a special episode as Mr. James Wakiaga is departing Eritrea shortly, and we've got a hold of him to talk about some national aspects. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. James. Can you give me a brief introduction and short mention on UNDP's works in Eritrea?
Okay, thank you very much, Sabrina, and I'm glad to be in your studios once more. And I'm also happy that we are having this interview or discussion during the month of May, which, as you know, is the month of independence. So I would like to take this opportunity to convey warm greetings and congratulations to the people and government of Eritrea as you mark the Independence Day on 24th May. Now, in terms of my introduction, I'm sure you are familiar with the work UNDP continues to do. I've been in the country for the last 4 years. In fact, slightly more than 48 months. And so this has been a journey. And in the work I've been doing, of course, I've been walking or standing in the shoulders of other people who've been here before me, carrying out the work of UNDP in promoting sustainable development in Eritrea. And so we've covered quite a lot of ground, and the work we've been doing touches on many important sectors of the economy. To begin with, let me say it's been a very interesting and also revealing journey, taking into account that we've been working in areas that are priorities of the government. For example, as UNDP, we've been accompanying the government in the area of sustainable management of its resources, specifically looking at nature-based solutions to adapt and mitigate on climate change, looking at the work around soil conservation, as well as working closely with a cross-segment of the whole of government in the area of capacity development at institutional level, as well as in terms of systems. We're also looking at the work we've been doing in terms of promotion of the human development. And as you can recall, have been part and parcel of the conversations around the human development report, which UNDP has been launching for many years. And if I may, for example, quote some of the progress that has been achieved, and looking at the data that is being made available, we see tremendous progress that has been achieved in the area of the Human Development Index. For instance, if you look at the period between 2002 and 2021, we've seen an appreciable progress on the Human Development Index, which initially in 2002 standing at 0.426 value, and now at 0.492, an increase of about 15%. We look at the area of health in terms of the life expectancy, which is one of the dimensions that is considered under the Human Development Index. We see Eritrea between 2002 and 2021, an increase of about 7.7 years. And so Eritrea stands as one of the countries that have done well in terms of their life expectancy at about 67 years, which is quite high compared to the average of the sub-Saharan Africa. And so if you look across the board, even in the areas that are critical for the country's investment, for instance, in the area of energy, where we see energy transition as a catalyzer of sustainable development, UNDP has been a partner with the government. And one example, of course, is a project we partnered, or we accompany the government together with the European Union, the Maidima Areza project, of which I had an occasion to visit almost 2 times, is one of those examples of projects that have had impactful and transformational impact on the community in terms of the beneficiaries, in terms of its impact on the economy, on the lives of the people, in terms of the social impacts on health, on education. And so these are areas which I must say UNDP has been deeply engaged with, and looking forward to even further advance our partnership with the government in these areas.
Okay, Mr. James, can you tell me the reflections on your tenure with UNDP Eritrea on moving the agenda on the development?
I must say, in terms of my reflection, when I arrived in 2019, of course, for me it was quite revealing in terms of how much I needed to learn to understand Eritrea as a model of development. And so I quickly learned the national philosophy in terms of the development approach, which is self-reliance. And self-reliance as a philosophy of national development, which I must say has been a critical factor also in terms of how we as UNDP can find entry points to further engage and support the national development priorities. And so in terms of what we've been able to do, first of course is to express my appreciation to the government of Eritrea for providing that platform, providing those spaces for us as UNDP, but also as UN family, to be able to engage, to be able to partner, to be able to accompany the government in supporting its development priorities. That, for instance, we don't take it for granted, and this has been a privilege for me to be able to work and support some of the initiatives that are closer and dear to the government in terms of advancing its development agenda. For instance, there have been areas which are critical in the area of the youth and skills development, which is an important project. And here we've been working with the National Union of Eritrean Youth and Students to advance skills development across the country, in youth centers, in Keren, youth centers in areas like Dibab in Mendefera, for instance, but also here in Zobamekel. There are quite a number of youth centers, but also youth programs across the board, from sports to entrepreneurship development, to support to startups. And these are issues that have been, we've been closely aligned with, but also they fall within the mandate of the UNDP in terms of rolling out support. The area of energy transition, which I've mentioned, I think has been one area where we look forward to further advance in terms of moving forward and delivering critical, important development results for the country. And we look forward to further this agenda. As you know, the government is already investing in the area of solar energy. And Maidima Reza project is just one example. I'm sure there's scope for us to expand on this in other regions in terms of developing mini grids, particularly in the farthest to reach areas of the country where energy is needed. And as I mentioned, looking at energy as a catalyzer of sustainable development, I think this is critical. Energy that is needed for schools to be able to power schools, energy that is needed to power businesses, particularly women enterprises that rely on energy to function. We look at energy in hospitals in terms of making hospitals to function properly. And I think there are important lessons we can draw from the example of Maidima Areza project, where we've seen what this energy has been able to do for the hospitals that are now able to function optimally and even to undertake surgeries. We know what it has been able to do to the women folk, especially women who are engaged in economic activities, and now they are able to benefit from that. But also in terms of powering schools. And I look at this as a transformational journey that we as UNDP, but also other UN sister agencies, we need to accompany the government to accomplish that. So I think there's a whole range of areas where I still see we have an opportunity. I had an opportunity to visit Massawa, which, as you know, is a beautiful place to be. You know, the beautiful sandy beaches, and looking at the whole potential of promoting tourism and promoting the marine industry in Massawa. I see this again as another area which can catalyze development, particularly in the area of the blue economy. And of course, as UNDP, working together with IFAD, with FAO, we look this as an opportunity where we can continue to partner with the government. I had a chance also when I was in Massawa to also visit the date palms. And again, this is another new area that the Ministry of Agriculture is pursuing and investing in. And as UNDP, we are happy of our partnership with FAO and IFAD to support the growth of the date palm in the Red Sea region. And I see this again as not just in terms of providing dates, but I look at it as a whole value chain of which it will create jobs. We'll see engagement of women in this sector. We look at it in terms of the date palms acting as carbon sink, and therefore its contribution to the environmental management is extremely huge. But importantly, Eritrea becoming one of the exporters of dates among the 9 countries that exports dates globally. And so again, this is a success story which we look forward to accompany the government in making sure that it happens, but also lessons that can be drawn from other countries who have already walked this journey, countries like Namibia, Saudi Arabia, and others who are among the leading exporters of dates.
How do you see Eritrea making strides on some of the key development indicators and where it needs to invest and accelerate actions for delivering results?
Yeah, I must say that Eritrea is on track in terms of its development trajectory. We are looking at investment in the human capital, because human capital is critical in supporting the country's development process. And so the investments that are happening in the area of education, we've seen an increase in enrollments. We've looked at how Eritrea has been performing in the area of health. As you will recall, Eritrea is among the first countries that achieved health indicators under the MDG paradigm. And therefore building on this in the context of the sustainable development goals is paramount. And so in terms of the human capital, I see a huge opportunity in terms of deepening the skills development, improving now, building now on the education in terms of the quality, but also in terms of skills development in areas that will be critical in powering the country's development. Secondly, I look at the area of food security, and again, Eritrea has a good track record in terms of food security, the investments that the Ministry of Agriculture is making. And in the area of the food security, going beyond that in terms of achieving its trajectory on areas of food nutrition, which is critical, particularly for the children, looking at the area of diversification in terms of production in the area of agriculture. But importantly, investments that can now happen in terms of having a shift towards value chain systems. And this is an area which already the Ministry of Agriculture, working with the other partners in the UN, is already looking into developing value chain in the area of agriculture, which will also create a structural transformation with jobs shifting from agriculture into the area of manufacturing. And so I see this as an important shift, building on the value chains in food commodities, but value chains also in other areas of the livestock sector. As you know, Eritrea has a thriving livestock sector. We, as UNDP, look forward to closely working with the Ministry of Industry, for example, to revive the tanning factory, the tanning sector, because there's need now to look at what are some of the value chains around the livestock sector industry. We have to look at the meat in terms of the packaging, but also in terms of the export of meat to the Middle Eastern countries, where we increasingly tend to have a huge demand for that. And I think Eritrea is well positioned in terms of its geographical location and also in terms of its capacity to be able to do that. So these are areas where I reflect and I see an opportunity which we need to start investing in. And of course, for the industries and manufacturing sector to begin thriving, we need to also look at investments in the area of energy. And I'm glad that the government is already putting effort to ensure that it increases its capacity for energy. The recent signing of an agreement with the African Development Bank for a 30 megawatt project in is it the Kaamre? Forgive my pronunciation. I think is critical, because that will make a huge contribution in terms of the capacity for power, and therefore this power will be able to benefit industries both at small, medium, and large-scale industries. So again, this will be important, and therefore we need to create this link between agriculture, industry, manufacturing, value addition, and investment in energy. And of course, not to forget water, which is also an important resource, and the government has been putting increasingly over the years a lot of investment in providing clean water to the citizens in the rural areas as well as in urban. And so again, we need to have a clear roadmap also for the water. So then you have a clear roadmap in terms of looking at an integrated agenda and linkages between industries, water, energy, agriculture, and then creating employment for the youth, who again needs to have the relevant skills that will be demanded to get this going. With the signing, I think, of the peace agreement, and therefore I think also creates a new era for Eritrea to benefit from the peace dividend. Looking forward to look at now a shift into a domestic development agenda for the country, now that we have a peace dividend in the region. I think this is important, and therefore we look forward to closely working with the government in looking at short, medium-term, and long-term visioning of the development roadmap or development plans, depending on what fits the Eritrea's model of visioning and planning moving into the future. So I think these are exciting times, and we are seeing our partnership deepening even further. We are looking forward to have even deeper conversations moving forward, particularly between the United Nations and the government on what needs to be supported, or which areas we need to focus on. And of course, this is very much linked to the cooperation framework that we signed in 2022, which runs between 2022 to 2026, because it provides a clear roadmap in terms of the priorities that the government is looking at, and therefore flexibility on the part of us as UN agencies to be able to retrofit into those priorities of the government, but also working with other partners to making sure that the country is able to achieve its vision of a sustainable development agenda in the medium to long term.
What key milestones are you proud of, Mr. James?
I'm proud of the fact that I had an opportunity to work in Eritrea. It's something I deliberately looked forward to be able to be part of Eritrea's journey as one of the youngest countries having gained its independence in 1991. Of course, the referendum was in 1994, and therefore walking that journey and being able to be part of its development paradigm. Eritrea is a young, proud nation, and it offers a lot of lessons to other African countries in terms of its credentials on Pan-Africanism, but also in terms of its development approach, which is the philosophy of the self-reliance. I think this is a paradigm which offers vital lessons in terms of how do you rely on your own resources to sustain your own development, but of course also looking at what I'll call strategic partnership, which you can also build in driving the self-reliance agenda. And so this is something, a vital lesson I carry away with me. And then secondly, I'm looking at the ambition of the country. The ambition also to be a country that is peaceful, to be a country that is able to create job opportunities for its young population, a country that is able to provide the basic necessities to each and every Eritrean. I think this is an aspiration for all countries, and this is part of what I'll call the SDG agenda, where we want to make sure that every citizen has an opportunity to achieve his or her basic rights in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of access to water, in terms of livelihood, income. And it is not an event. Of course, it is a journey. And so I'm proud that I've been part of that journey of accompanying the country, the people, and its government to achieve this, and looking forward even for my successor to build on these gains. As I mentioned, it's a journey and not an event.
What are the key drivers of change? What are your views in this regard?
Yeah, some of the key drivers that I see. I think one, agriculture is an important sector, not just for Eritrea, but I think talking as a whole for the continent. And agriculture will be important in terms of food security, but also in terms of the provision of the necessary materials that can also move into the manufacturing sector, particularly in terms of the value chain system that I talked about, whether it is in the dairy industry, whether it is in the cheese factories, which Eritrea has huge potential and opportunities to drive. I look at it in terms of the dates, which we already talked about. We have to look at it in terms of cereal industry, being able to package some of the cereals that we're able to produce and creating value in them. I see this as one area where Eritrea can continue to put more investment on. And so the link between agriculture and industry in terms of structural transformation of these sectors. Secondly, I look at tourism and heritage. And I'm always proud of Eritrea's heritage in terms of the fact that being able to conserve the culture, being able to be able to maintain the beauty of Asmara as one of UNESCO heritages, is a huge attraction. And then looking at the resources you already have, I mentioned the sandy beaches of Massawa as another corridor for tourism. And of course, in the tourism sector, looking at it beyond the nation, but looking at the integrated approach to tourism through regional integration, how Eritrea can then fit within the regional roadmap of tourism circuit, working closely with Kenya, with Ethiopia, with Sudan, and other countries in promoting the tourism sector, so that we don't just look at it as from just at the national level, but as part of the regional integration agenda or review of the tourism roadmap in the medium to long term. So that's another driver that I see. The other area I see is in the area of innovation. And I must say, I've been interacting with a lot of youth in this country, and I get amazed, you know, with their knowledge. I get amazed with their level of understanding in areas such as digitalization. And so as UNDP, we've been working closely with the National Union of Eritrean Youth and Students, for example, to look at how we can capacitate the innovation lab, which is currently being established. And so we look forward to look at this as one of those important infrastructures that can help to capture on the youth creativity and innovation, particularly in the area of the IT. And so, of course, we look forward to the day when we can also start looking at investments happening in the area of digitalization, which will also be critical as we move towards the fourth industrial revolution. And so this will be one area where I see a lot of potential, because I see as Africa, we need to really tap into the creativity, into the innovation of our youth as the future of our continent moving forward. And hence our project on the skills development also encompass the area of innovation as a catalyzer also of development, as an enabler of development. So I see this as another area where we can apply our efforts to drive the transformation agenda moving forward. Then, of course, the fact that the country has invested a lot on soil conservation and afforestation. And recently, when my administrator, Akim Steiner, was here, we had an opportunity to visit the Sustainable Land Management project that is being implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment. And that being one of those projects which we are also proud of because of its transformative nature in soil conservation, but importantly in land tenure system, because this project was also building on the 1994 land reform. And what it has done, of course, is providing land security to the farmers in that region, benefiting about 28,000 villages in the Serejega area, you know, and it's been impactful because the land tenure and land security has given them confidence to invest in the land which they've been allocated in terms of food production, in terms of distribution, but also in terms of the diversification of the crops. And also, importantly, it has changed the ecosystem of the Serejeka. And every time you go there, you look at the trees, you look at the afforestation, you look at the entire ecosystem in terms of the water systems which have been created through the check dams and micro dams. For me, I think this is a success story which needs to be replicated in other regions of the country, building on the successes, but also on the lessons learned from this project. So again, we have to look at the area of the climate financing moving into the future, because I think this is an area where the country has a huge potential. And already we've been working closely with the Ministry of Environment under their leadership in terms of tapping into the global environmental facility to support investments in soil conservation, in land tenure, in protection areas, in biodiversity. So it's a huge gamut of areas that helps to build and improve on the climate change agenda in terms of mitigation as well as adaptation. So in a sense, I think the fact that a lot of initiatives that are being done in this country are human-centered, they are people-centered. For me, I think that is critical, and it aligns with UNDP mantra of ensuring nobody is left behind, of ensuring we reach those farthest first. And so for me, I think these are some of those critical areas of development we need to continue emphasizing on, but importantly, to also bring out the Eritrean story, because sometimes I get this feeling we haven't fully talked about the Eritrean story in terms of the successes on areas of climate change, the areas of environmental protection, in terms of how Eritrea is able to invest in nature-based solutions, investments in areas like use of organic fertilizers. Recently we had the conference, for example, which again showcased the investments that the country is making and the progress it's making in terms of harnessing organic fertilizers. So these are some of the areas which I see will be important drivers for the country's transformation.
So tell us what moved you. I mean, you have traveled to a reasonably remote part of the country. So what impressed or inspired you the most, and is there anything that you would like to share your reflections with us?
Thanks. It was good to travel. I had the opportunity to travel to the Bob, to travel to Anseba, to places like Keren, and in some of the near remote areas to visit some of the UNDP projects. The Red Sea region, I just mentioned my visits to Masawa, which I had an opportunity to visit and interact with the people and the community. One thing I think which always struck me every time I visited our projects in these areas, one is the solidarity of the community and the role of the community in driving the development agenda in those areas. So I see everywhere I visited that community has always been central. And I think this is in line with our African tradition, where we have to view everything from the lenses of the community. And the warmth that I received, being welcomed in their homes, you know, to share coffee, to share injera with them, and even to discover new foods, you know, in some of the areas I went, especially recently when we went to Keren. For me, I think that was very touching. The generosity, you know, the love and the warmth of the people of Eritrea is something that I'll carry with. And then, of course, the landscape is always amazing. I mean, the mountains, the roads. Initially, of course, it can be a little bit scary when you move into in the roads. But I think with time you get used, and yeah, and of course the landscape is beautiful, you know, and this is all part of what I've been saying. I think in terms of the attraction that the country offers. For me, that was amazing. In places like Masawa, for example, just enjoying the sandy beaches, enjoying the serenity of the place. Not to mention, the waters are very clean. The fish, you know, a lot of fish, which in most jurisdictions, you know, very difficult because a lot of countries are struggling with the challenges of overfishing. But here in Eritrea, I see untapped fishing resources. And I think this is a national heritage. I think this is something we need to be proud about as a heritage that is going to be bequeathed to the next generation. Because sustainable development is nothing but about what you are able to protect, to conserve, and bequeath the next generation, so that we don't exploit everything, for ourselves, but we leave some. We are what we call protectors of what we have now for the next generation. And so for me, this is what I see in Eritrea, whether in terms of its fisheries resources, whether in terms of its afforestation. Because when I look at the investments being done on terracing, the investments being done on afforestation across all the regions that I visited, it's about generational wealth. Because the people who will benefit from these investments may not necessarily be this generation, but the next generation will be the beneficiaries of the investments that are being done now. And I think for me, this is a good story to talk about.
How do you see partnership with government and working together with the UN system in Eritrea, and what potential lies ahead as you're departing Eritrea?
What I've witnessed in the last 4 years is a deepening of the partnership between the government of the state of Eritrea and the United Nations. And the hallmark of this, of course, was the recent signing of the cooperation framework that runs from 2022 to 2024, which accentuated the confidence, the trust that is there between the government and the UNDP. And my role as UNDP resident representative over the years has been for me to cultivate the confidence, to cultivate the trust and healthy dialogue with the people and the government of Eritrea to achieve their ambition in the area of sustainable development, ensuring that this is done taking into account the respect and the dignity of the people and the country. For me, I think this is paramount, and this has been the mantra of the UN country team in terms of ensuring we build that trust, that we accompany the government in fostering its development agenda. UN is a family, and Eritrea is part of the UN family. And so we are here as international civil servants to basically support the government priorities. And therefore we tend not to be prescriptive, but rather to look at what is it that the government wants to do to promote its development agenda. And so we help to foster that. And I think I'm happy that we have a very strong relation. And I must once again thank the government for providing that space, for providing us with the platform to be able to accompany the government on its development journey. And so this is something I'm sure we'll continue to sustain moving into the future, and looking forward to further, the support in terms of the areas that the government has identified in terms of its priorities, because at the end of the day, we all share a common future, which is to ensure we have improved lives and improved livelihoods. And that's what UN is all about. And that is what the cooperation framework talks about. And so looking forward to ensure that this continues even into the future. Of course, the recent visit by my administrator, Akim Steiner, was also an important visit in strengthening these relations, and also in terms of coming to listen to what the government considers its priorities for the country transformation. And so important discussions around areas of energy transition, investment in the areas of water, in the area of health, education, which are critical drivers of development. The visit also by the regional directors in January of 2022 also further accentuated the partnership, and of course followed by other visits that were done by high-level officials. So I think we stand at an important juncture of history in terms of making sure how we support Eritrea's ambitions of becoming a great nation.
So you have been in Eritrea for around 4 years, right? What are the top 3 things that you would like to suggest to Eritrea Eritrea should do in order to move forward?
We are here to accompany the government and not to prescribe, what the government needs to do, but rather to share ideas, in terms of what we see viable policy choices and policy options in an open-minded way, but also for us to learn, what is it that Eritrea is doing well that we can also share with other countries. And so from where I sit, I see a lot of opportunities that have been presented to Eritrea in a number of areas where Eritrea can be a leader. And one of those areas I see is in the area of energy transition. I see Eritrea has huge potential in geothermal, huge potential in wind energy, huge potential in solar energy. And so what is needed is to look at how it could harness on the available technology to make the country a net exporter of energy. So I'm looking at the time when Eritrea is able to export energy, electricity, to the other countries, and their efforts in terms of electricity pooling, being supported by organizations like ADB. And so I think I see this as an important pathway. I also see an important pathway in terms of infrastructure. And Eritrea is blessed with 2 important ports, the port of Massawa and the port of Assab. And I look at this as an important infrastructure that can help to serve the entire region and create tremendous job opportunities. So I look at this as one area where UN and UNDP is open to listen and to provide policy options in terms of the revamping these ports to become centers of shipping, centers of maritime industry for the country, because then it will open up for the establishment of what I'll call free zones, free zones for export processing and re-export to other countries. So I see that again as a huge opportunity, and I'm sure the government is working on that. Eritrea is blessed also with mineral resources, and the country has been able to invest in a very practical and pragmatic manner in terms of the way it has been able to negotiate revenues for its mineral resource, where if you look at the way it's done, almost 60% of the revenue actually goes to the government, as opposed to other jurisdictions where you find the net benefit from the extractive industry is not as beneficial. And so again, I look at Eritrea further deepening this in terms of value addition in the extractive sector, because this will also create more jobs, but also enhance the revenues that can be earned from this. Huge potential in the colony industry, especially the potassium, and so Eritrea also becoming a center for fertilizer production in the continent. And this again, looking at it in the medium to long term, this is a huge potential of which can also propel the country's transformation agenda. Fishing industry, I cannot belabor that point. And then finally, also in the area of the financial sector, the country is also has an opportunity to becoming also a financial sector. It's just now to look at the financial reforms that needs to be carried out. But also this, you have to look at it in terms of the overall context of the service industry. And so this is also another area where resources and skills and knowledge can be applied to make Eritrea also a center as a financial center for the region, particularly within the IGAD region.
What can Eritrea offer to the rest of the countries in the region in terms of its success in advancing in the SDGs?
Yeah. In terms of the SDGs, I mentioned the fact that Eritrea was one of the first countries to achieve its health MDGs. And this is a lesson that Eritrea can offer to other countries. And they were able to capture this during the high-level political forum in July of 2022, when Eritrea produced its inaugural voluntary national review report, the VNR report that was produced. It captured Eritrea's lessons in terms of MDGs. And these are lessons which were able to be shared with other countries during the high-level political forum. But the VNR also looked at the other SDGs on health and SDG 13 on climate action as, again, areas where Eritrea is doing pretty well. It's on track, in terms of SDG 13 and SDG 3, okay, on health. So I see these are lessons which other countries can learn from Eritrea. I look at the mantra of the self-reliance and the fact that the country relies on its own resources before looking outwards. This is another lesson which needs to be looked further as to what Eritrea has been able to get it right. I look at this summer program, summer greening program. For me, it amazes me. I've been here for 4 years, and every holiday season looking at the young people, engaging in the summer program, planting trees, cleaning. For me, this is an important project that needs to be replicated in other countries. And it is at the center of the country's agenda on climate action. And so again, it's something I'm always proud about. I wish other children, even in other countries I go to, they could be doing similar projects during school holidays, because it adds into the discipline. It makes them also be more aware in terms of nature-based solution. It makes them also responsible in terms of creating a clean environment. So this is another lesson which I think can be replicated in other countries.
Thank you so much, Mr. James. We hope to see you again very soon. Thank you for watching, everyone. This is Open Mic, and we'll see you next time.